In the last section, we made a container out of the newly created book detail component. So we can now make use of this.props.book inside of the container because we mapped our state, our application state, to the props of this particular component here. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's go ahead and print out the title of the currently selected book. So I'm going to remove our placeholder text in here, and we'll replace it with an H3, and we'll say details 4. And then we'll add another div, and inside of here we'll put our curly braces with this.props.book.title. Okay, so simple enough here, right? We've got this.props.book.title. That should print out the title of the book. I'm going to save this and flip back over to the browser. So we've got our stuff on the left, and we've got our book detail at the top. I'm going to go ahead now and refresh the page. And you'll notice that we get a big old error message here. It says cannot read property title of null. So let's think about exactly what's going on here. I'm going to flip open our active book reducer. Whenever our application first boots up, we don't have any existing application state, right? It hasn't been defined yet. Remember, our application state is assembled entirely by all of our reducers. So under the hood, what Redux does is it sends a couple of kind of like booting up actions through all the reducers. So, at this point in time, we've only created one action, the book selected action. But there actually are some other actions that Redux will throw through here by default, just to say like, okay, like I'm warming up, I'm starting up here, let's make sure everything is working just fine, right? Since our active book reducer is getting called when the application first starts up, let's think about what happens there, okay? We're gonna say, okay, some like action comes through, we don't know what the type is, but it's definitely not book selected. And so what happens is, we hit this statement right here. It says, just return state. Well, what is the state in that case? We defaulted it to null up here, right? So what that means is, when our application first boots up, our active book piece of state is always going to be null. It doesn't exist. We haven't actually clicked on anything yet, so we don't have anything selected. What that means is, our component is going to render, and it's going to try to say this.props.book.title, where this part right here is null. So we're trying to read property title of null, which throws an error in JavaScript. So how do we deal with this? This is something that comes across in Redux apps all the time. If we don't have a reasonable default for our state, our application state, it might cause some of our components to just flat out throw an error because they expect some property to be defined in here, but we're not giving it that property. So what I usually do is add an initial check in the render method. And inside of it, I'll say if not this.props.book, in other words, if this.props.book doesn't exist yet, then we'll return early. And when we return early, we'll say select a book to get started. So what's going to happen here? When we first boot the app up, this.props.book is null, which means we're going to enter this case right here. If we enter this case, we're going to return early from the render function with this kind of like, warm-up message that says, hey, you haven't really done anything yet. I don't have any information to show you yet. Please click on a book to get started. Once they actually click on a book, it's going to update our application state, which is going to cause our container to re-render because we've hooked up this container to Redux, right? When it re-renders, we will then have this.props.book defined, which means we'll successfully get down to this block of code right here, and we'll successfully print out the book's title. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. I'm going to go back over to my browser. Let's refresh. And it looks like we successfully have at the top, select a book to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and let's give this a shot, see if everything works. I'm going to click on JavaScript the good parts, and we get details for JavaScript the good parts, Harry Potter, Dark Tower, and Eloquent Ruby. Awesome. So this is exactly what we're going for. When we click on a book, it selects it and we can see some information about it. So the key here is that we are manipulating our application state over time through the use of action creators. Okay, so let's spice up the application just a little bit, just to show how easy it is to add, tiny changes over time. I'm going to open up the books reducer, and we're going to say that all of these books have a length to them in the form of pages. So we'll say pages is a number, and it just describes how many pages are in the book. Say, how about 85 pages? And Ruby tends to be pretty terse in its syntax, so they only needed one page to describe Ruby. Fantastic. All right, let's save this, and then go back over to book detail. And we'll say that the title right here, let's put on a nice little thing that says, hey, this is the title of the book. And we'll add another div that says pages, this.props.book.pages. I'm going to save this and then flip back over to the browser. We'll refresh. We don't have a initial book. Our active book piece of state starts off as null in our application. And so we will say, here we go. Click on one, and we get title, JavaScript, the good parts, pages 101, Harry Potter, Dark Tower, Eloquent Ruby. Sweet, this looks good. Let's go ahead and review what we've done in the next section.